This is not an ad. I am not here to convince you to buy a soda. This is a story about how a very ordinary-looking drink became one of the most valuable beverage startups in America. And the surprising part is that it did not begin in a giant factory, a corporate lab, or a boardroom. It began in a kitchen, with a problem that one woman was trying to solve for herself. A lot of billion-dollar stories do not start with something glamorous. Sometimes they start with a tiny product that most people would walk past without thinking twice. A sauce, a snack, cookie, a drink. The product looks simple, but behind it is a founder who sees a small problem clearly, solves it better than everyone else, and then learns how to scale that solution across the country. One example is Poppi, a bright, modern soda brand built around apple cider vinegar and prebiotics. In recent years, it seemed to appear everywhere: grocery stores, health food stores, convenience shelves, social media feeds, and celebrity posts. Then, in 2025, PepsiCo announced a $1.95 billion deal to acquire it. But long before the big number, there was a much less glamorous beginning. The main character of this story is Allison Ellsworth. Before she became a beverage founder, she worked in the oil and gas industry. But for years, she struggled with digestive discomfort. She saw doctors, tried different approaches, and kept looking for something that would help. Eventually, one doctor suggested apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar had a reputation as a wellness habit, but there was one huge problem. It tasted terrible. Allison later compared the experience to drinking battery acid. Every day, she had to hold her nose and force it down. And that is where the business idea began, because a product that helps people but tastes awful is not finished. It is waiting for someone to make it usable. So she started experimenting. For months, she mixed apple cider vinegar with sparkling water, fruit juice, and natural sweeteners. She was not trying to invent a luxury drink. She was trying to make something healthy-ish feel normal, refreshing, and enjoyable. The early versions were probably messy, too sour, too flat, or too sweet. But each failed batch taught her something. The timing was important. Americans love soda, but many people also feel guilty drinking it. Regular soda can feel too sugary. Diet soda can feel artificial. Plain sparkling water is healthier, but to many people it feels boring. Allison saw an opening. What if a drink could feel like soda, taste like soda, but carry the promise of something better for the body? Eventually, Allison created a version that actually tasted good. It was still built around apple cider vinegar, but now it was fizzy, fruity, and much easier to drink. That changed the idea from a personal remedy into a possible product. Because when a solution stops being something only you can tolerate and becomes something strangers might enjoy, that is when a kitchen experiment starts looking like a business. She bottled the drink and took it to a local farmer's market in Texas. That was the first real test. Not investors, not consultants, not a fancy focus group. Just ordinary people walking past a small table, deciding whether they were curious enough to try a strange apple cider vinegar soda. And the signal came quickly. People bought it. Then more people bought it. The product started selling faster than she expected. That is a powerful moment for any founder, because before that, the idea lives mostly in your head. But once strangers pull out their wallets, the market is giving you a different kind of answer. Soon, Allison made a serious decision. She left her job and started working on the drink full-time. That sounds inspiring when you hear it after the success has already happened, but in the moment it was risky. She was not leaving a job for a guaranteed company. She was leaving a stable path for a table at a farmer's market and a drink that still needed to prove it could become something much bigger. Then came the first major break. After only a few weeks at the market, a buyer from Whole Foods noticed the drink. At the time, a product like this was unusual. It was not exactly traditional soda, not plain sparkling water, and not a typical health drink. That made it interesting. The buyer saw something that could fill a gap on the shelf. But getting invited into a major retail chain is not the same as being ready for it. A farmer's market booth is small batch. A grocery shelf is a system. You need production, packaging, inventory, distribution, cash flow, and the ability to deliver the same product again and again. For Allison and her husband Stephen, this was the moment when the side hustle had to become a real company. The couple decided to go all in. Stephen supported the business and eventually left his own job too. Together, they invested their savings, around $15,000, into production. That number is important because it shows how small the beginning really was. This was not a venture-backed startup with millions in the bank. It was a young family placing a very personal bet. The unit economics looked promising. The drink cost far less to make than its retail price, leaving room for a real margin. Within about a year and a half, sales reached roughly $500,000. But growth brings a new problem. Demand can become too expensive to serve. To make more product, they needed more capital for production and distribution. So they went looking for money and exposure. In 2018, Allison and Stephen walked into the Shark Tank studio. Allison was 9 months pregnant with their second child. That detail matters because it shows the emotional weight of the moment. They were not just pitching a drink. They were standing there with a young family, limited resources, and a company that needed one major yes. Their pitch had a memorable twist. First, they gave the investors plain apple cider vinegar to taste. The reaction was immediate. Sour faces, discomfort, almost comic disgust. Then they handed out their drink. Same core ingredient, completely different experience. In a few seconds, the investors understood the problem and the solution. The couple asked for $400,000 in exchange for 10% of the company. On paper, it was a clean ask. But investors were not only judging the drink. They were judging the category, the branding, the scalability, the founders, and whether this was a niche health product or something that could become a national beverage brand. One by one, most of the investors stepped out. For a founder, that is a brutal feeling. You stand under the lights, you hear doubts spoken out loud, and every no makes the room feel smaller. But then one investor stayed interested, Rohan Oza, a beverage veteran who had helped build major consumer brands. Rohan offered the $400,000, but he wanted 25% of the company. That was much more equity than Allison and Stephen wanted to give up. In that moment, they faced the classic founder dilemma. Protect the percentage of a small company, or give up more ownership to someone who might help turn the company into something much larger. They accepted the deal. And looking back, that decision became one of the most important moments in the company's history. Because sometimes the best deal is not the one with the prettiest terms. It is the one that brings the right person into the room. Rohan did not just bring money. He brought beverage experience, brand instincts, and access. After the deal, the brand changed dramatically. The original name and bottle format were replaced with something younger, brighter, and easier to notice. The drink moved from glass bottles into colorful cans. The positioning shifted from an apple cider vinegar drink to a prebiotic soda. That may sound like simple marketing language, but it changed the way customers understood the product. This part of the story is easy to underestimate. In a crowded beverage aisle, taste matters, but attention matters too. A can has only a second to make someone curious. Bright colors, simple positioning, and a clear category can turn a confusing health drink into a product that feels fun, social, and easy to try. The brand also learned how to live in culture. Celebrity investors, social media buzz, bright packaging, and the better-for-you soda trend all worked together. The product was not only sold as a drink. It became a small lifestyle signal. Soda is back, but in a form that feels more modern. then the numbers started to move fast. The company grew from a small farmer's market idea into a national brand. Its revenue rose sharply year after year, reaching hundreds of millions of dollars. By 2024, Poppi had reportedly passed $500 million in sales. For a drink that began as a kitchen experiment, that is almost unbelievable. In 2025, PepsiCo announced it would acquire Poppi for $1.95 billion. The deal turned Allison and Stephen's experiment into one of the great modern beverage startup stories. It also made Rohan's investment look brilliant. The painful equity they gave up years earlier became part of the reason the company had a chance to grow so large. So what is the real lesson here? To me, it is not simply that you should give away equity. It is that the right partner can be worth the dilution. 100% of a small, stuck company may be less valuable than a smaller piece of a company that finally has the expertise, access, and strategy to scale. Founders often obsess over the exact percentage, the exact valuation, the exact terms. Those things matter. But when a business is still fragile, the person sitting across the table can matter even more. The right partner can change packaging, positioning, distribution, storytelling, and confidence. They can help the founder see the business not as it is today, but as it could become. And just to be honest, when you actually taste one of these modern prebiotic sodas, you may not feel like it is some magical invention. It can taste like a regular soda, maybe a little fruitier, maybe a little lighter. But that is exactly the point. The genius was not making apple cider vinegar taste strange. The genius was making it feel normal enough for millions of people to try. That is why this story is bigger than one drink. It is about solving a real problem, testing it with real customers, taking risk when the opportunity arrives, and knowing when to bring in someone who can help you reach a level you cannot reach alone. Sometimes the goal is not to protect every slice of the pie. Sometimes the goal is to make the pie so much bigger that everyone wins.